Yes, my name is KennethLoch of the TENNISSANCE method. Just want to get into what I'm calling tennis and enlightenment. Let's see, I think it would be good for me to do this. Who I'm claiming to be is actually the first tennis player to reach enlightenment and who can actually teach people how ultimately to become enlightened and to what that means. Let's see, so it just turns out that, let's see, I would be, say, the first day enlightened teacher. So basically, so the idea that I would be teaching tennis players how to reach enlightenment, become enlightened, and then the idea how that would be opposed to not, say, becoming enlightened. And then the idea that how those that would represent, say, two paths that a person would be on, and the idea is that basically if a person's not on the path to reaching enlightenment, well, they're on the path to not reaching enlightenment. And then the idea that how are those two paths, how are they opposed to each other? And then basically how would I be, say, opposed to somebody who is not enlightened? And it's kind of a laundry list of things that I could bring up, but let's see, just off just the idea of me being ambidextrous and the nature of being ambidextrous and then being enlightened. And then it just turns out, well, who I represent is a tennis player who is enlightened and is ambidextrous. And so the idea is that right now, I'm actually, let's see, I could say that path to enlightenment, I got to the enlightenment, and now I can ultimately put tennis players on that path. And then basic requirement would be to, in a sense, not be unenlightened, or it's kind of in the dark. You got to get into the light and leave the kind of the dark behind. So the idea of just developing one arm, and it's actually it's interesting because it's actually at that point a person actually becomes healthy. So the whole idea of enlightenment in relation to becoming healthy. So the idea that, say, me being, say, the enlightened teacher, say, I'm actually an enlightened healer, because ultimately, not being ambidextrous, it's ultimately you're not, say, holistically healthy, based on the fact that physically you would be, you'd be imbalanced, and the whole basis of the relationship would be based on two or more people, say, that were suffering from the same imbalance. And so the idea that to be enlightened, it requires a person to be intelligent and do stuff that's intelligent. And it turns out that being ambidextrous is actually, you're actually being intelligent by being ambidextrous. And the idea is that how I would go about doing that. I did a video just probably a week ago or so, and kind of got into the idea of the I think I called it ambidextrous tennis lesson, where I'm teaching how you would go about using two tennis rackets and a tennis ball, and then being able to develop both arms, and how you go about doing that. So ultimately, what I was teaching about becoming ambidextrous, and how you would go about doing that, it would be right in relation to becoming enlightened. And then ultimately, when a person does become ambidextrous, when I can get them on course, and then they would be my student, right there, teacher-student connection. The game would be on, say. The student would be going to the light, say, and turn their back on the darkness, which would be just actually one thing would be is you got to turn your back on that whole idea of developing one arm. And yeah, let me see if I can get into the whole idea of exercise. Turns out that that tennis players haven't really realized how tennis represents itself as an exercise, and they have actually assumed that actually developing one arm and playing the sport actually equates to exercise. And that's when it comes to like holistic health, that includes mental health and physical health. And then mentally, when somebody becomes physically, say, disoriented, or just they figure that developing one arm and then exercise, it actually affects them mentally. It becomes delusional, and then mentally the idea that it's a state of not being intelligent. So what they would be doing physically would not represent itself as being intelligent, and then what they would be thinking or what they'd be knowing would also be not intelligent. So the whole idea is that say the mind-body connection there, you're either connected, mind-body, or you're not. And then when it comes to, say, the mind-body, it would be based on, just say right there, it would be having the intelligence in the mind to actually understand what it means to be coordinated and ultimately be coordinated based on the fact that you would be ambidextrous. So I'm here now to actually provide the means for, say, yourself with the means for actually becoming healthy, regaining. It's like a regaining. You would ultimately, in a sense, you would. I figure there's you have two selves, a higher self and a lower self, and the idea is that the enlightened state is the higher self. So the idea is that when a person becomes enlightened, they actually will reach their higher self, and they have to leave behind their lower self and everything that was associated with that. Yeah, let me see more about the Enlightenment now. Why did I reach enlightenment? It's why did I come upon all this? And it just turned out that I was destined. Those who reach enlightenment will reach enlightenment, kind of thing. It just and I just represent the first one, and the idea there is that ultimately this enlightenment, and ultimately age of enlightenment for tennis, it's actually a healthy place. It's really, we really need to recognize the nature of say tennis right now, and the fact that it has been in the dark, and it's as long as it's in the dark, it just it's and the nature of just the idea that what does it all prove? What is developing one arm in the sport prove, and what are they proving, and what's the meaning of it? The idea is that who can win more Grand Slams? I mean, what's who's doing just doing the thinking around here kind of thing. It's yeah, but the Enlightenment. It turns out that when it comes to myself and enlightenment, I also witnessed an enlightenment through the fine arts and through the fine art of painting, and can explain that enlightenment in relation to a transcendence of all through the means of painting. I transcended the object and discovered the nature of how, say, the actual process of painting and the process of music and dance, say, are interrelated in a spiritual, metaphysical sense. And then when I bring up that transcendence, ultimately what I was able to do was through tennis is I was able to transcend the sport and ultimately transcend specialization also. So the idea is that my enlightenments brought me to a point of where I realized the nature of interdisciplinary. So the idea is that when it comes to tennis and the Enlightenment, it's in relation to other disciplines, in relation to their enlightenments. And it just turns out that tennis has an enlightenment. I mean, I got to get into that. It's just kind of interesting. It's like we wouldn't have to be enlightened if we were already enlightened. So the nature of that. So it's just funny that it's kind of can be understood in relation to our evolution, and who I represent is just somebody who comes kind of in due season and just brings things full circle. I should get into that, explaining that a little bit more and getting into that, because I think that's right there. It's kind of interesting. It's like why the nature of that enlightenment. The idea there is that I didn't need to become enlightened. I should have had an enlightened teacher who taught me how to be enlightened. I mean, that should be like a kind of an educational standard for teachers. It requires a teacher to be, in a sense, enlightened and also like healthy themselves before they can actually should teach another person. Because ultimately, if they were not just say not healthy, they would be just passing along relationship with knowledge, which was also unhealthy in that connection. Yeah, I just want to put some stuff down. Hope you got something from it. Thank you.